I will run through the card for the fight nights coming up ahead. So tomorrow we have a massive fight night. I always say massive, but they are. This one is at Wembley in London, just down the road from me. And we will be seeing the unified champ Artur Beterbiev take on his mandatory challenger, Britain, Anthony Yarde. So I'm going to go through that fight too, and then I'm going to have a look at the undercard as well, just to give you an insight as to who else is fighting. So without further ado, let's start from the top. Let's start with the headliner. We've got Anthony Yarde and Artur Beterbiev. So this is the light heavyweight world championship. And Artur Beterbiev already has 3 of those belts. He got the IBF in 2017, WBC in 2019, and most recently the WBO last year against Joe Smith Jr. So he is a fantastic champion. However, Anthony Yarde, does he stand a chance? I mean, the bookies are saying no, and he is a massive underdog. However, he does have power, and I really like him as a fighter. So I'm going to go through the fighters, give you their stats, and see where you think, if it's worth a bet. Whatever happens, though, I think it'll be a good fight. So let's start with the mandatory. Let's start with Anthony Yarde, because, you know, he's from London. Here I am in London. I'm going to start with him. So he is 31 years old. His record stands at 23 wins, 2 losses. 22 of his wins came by KO. I'm going to go through his losses as well, because I think that they're not necessarily clear cut. He did a bad job. So he has actually challenged for this title before. He challenged Kovalev in 2019. He actually went into the lion's den. He went to Russia, where he was actually warned not to drink the water because there might be sabotage. But he went in there with confidence, and actually he put on a good show. So if you want to look that up, the whole fight's on YouTube. He did a really good job. He managed to hurt Kovalev. The first 5-6 rounds, I think he did really well. What happened towards the 9th, though, is that he just seemed to run out of gas. It was as simple as that. He just gassed out. But it was a good fight. It was a good fight. So this is his second opportunity at trying to win the title, but actually there are 3 on the line, which is pretty cool. Also, this time, obviously, he's got the home advantage. He will be in Wembley, and he's originally from Hackney. So he started boxing pretty late on. Properly, he started it when he was 18 years old. That is because he was actually a footballer first. And he actually was signed by Queen's Park Rangers. So he had a decent football career ahead of him. However, he was injured and he was taken out, and he suddenly had to rethink, okay, what do I do with my life? He had been boxing, just classes a little bit from the age of 14. So he thought, right, that's it, I'm going to do boxing. That was a good thing for him, because like a lot of stories I tell on this show, he's from an area where there's a lot of gangs. He saw people being stabbed, loads of his mates either died or went to prison. And actually, again, boxing took him out of that path, took him on a clean one. And he ended up absolutely loving it. So he was after Frank Warren, and his long-term trainer, Tunde Ajayi, he basically bothered Frank Warren to take notice of Anthony Yarde. Anthony Yarde managed to win the Haringey Box Cup tournament, and he knocked everyone out in it, which is why he managed to stand out, because his amateur career is basically non-existent. He had 12 amateur fights. I think 11 of them were KOs. However, that is it. There's no pedigree, there's no build-up, and you'll see how that makes a massive difference when he's going to be up against Artur Beterbiev, who's got one of the biggest amateur records going. So he decided to go pro in 2015, and he managed to get his way, and Frank Warren at Queensberry took him on, saw some potential. And it's absolutely clear and for sure that he has power. I think he's got good hand speed, and actually he doesn't necessarily need to hit cleanly for it to really do some damage. He's gained composure as well over his career and over time. So let's deal with his other loss. So his other loss was to other fellow Brit, Lyndon Arthur, and this happened in 2020. Now, I want to go through this because it was a bad loss, but it was due, I would say, not to his ability in the ring. Obviously, that was COVID year. Anthony Yarde suffered massively. His dad passed away, and so did 3 of his grandparents. He carried on fighting and didn't think that grief was affecting him. And then he stepped in the ring with Lyndon Arthur, and all of a sudden it did. Fell to bits completely. And I think there are a lot of people are in his team that have admitted fault for this, particularly his own trainer. Tunde has said, you know, other people should have looked after him at that point, even though Anthony Yarde thought he was fine. When he stepped in that ring, he realized he wasn't okay. The fight was, you know, it didn't go his way whatsoever. He came away from boxing, he went to Mexico, and he grieved properly. Then he came back a year later, in 2021 in December, and he had that rematch with Lyndon Arthur. And this is where you saw his skills, the skills that you should have seen in 2020, but couldn't, because I think they were completely shrouded by grief. He took on Lyndon Arthur, he got a KO in the 4th round, so he really did some damage and really said, right, I'm back. Since then, he's done really well. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. His last fight with Stephanie Koikov, who's a decent fighter as well. He had 14 wins, only 2 losses, 12 of those wins coming by KO. So decent fighter. And he managed to get another knockout in the 3rd round of that one. So I would say that Anthony Yarde is on point at the moment. He doesn't have the pedigree of the amateurs. He's pretty much learned on the job. And here's his 2nd attempt at a world title. I would say, don't write him off, because what he's managed to do in the very little time that he's had, I think is incredible. You know, he comes across as a nice guy in interviews as well. So don't write it off. If I'm honest, I don't think that he's going to win, but I do think you're going to get a good fight. And I kind of want him to win. It would be a great upset. So now let's talk about his opponent, the reigning champ, Artur Beterbiev. He's 18-0, and every single one of his wins has come by way of knockout. I mean, you can't fault his power. This guy has everything. So he's Russian, but Russian Canadian. So he does actually reside in Canada. He does have a Canadian passport over there. And his last fight, as I said earlier, was with Joe Smith Jr., and that was a TKO in the 2nd round. He is 38 years old, but clearly shows absolutely no signs of slowing down at all whatsoever. So I'll tell you where he's from. He is a born fighter. Place called Dagestan in Russia, where there's a lot of corruption, anarchy. It was a place where 2 Chechnyan wars were going on when he was growing up. And he said at times he didn't have a very big house, but there were up to 30 refugees at any one time living in his house. And fighting and street fighting tournaments were rife in this town. They were totally normal, not really for the adults, but for the kids. So this I found was really interesting. So the place where he is from has more boxers, wrestlers, and MMA fighters come from there than anywhere else in the world. I think that's a great fact, and it's obvious why. You know, apparently 80% of the kids were in, you know, some sort of martial arts training or boxing / taking part in these very normal street fight tournaments. Artur Beterbiev himself, he had a job when he was 8 years old. He worked in a petrol garage during the day, so his school day would be chopped in 2, and this apparently is the case for like 80% of kids that live there, that half of your day is spent at school, and then the other half of the day is spent in these boxing clubs. So this is in his blood. He is a fighter. He's grown up with it from day dot, and I think that explains a lot. There's some real grit in Beterbiev. So he's got an amazing amateur career. He was taken to boxing properly at the age of 10, and it only took him 6 months to win his first junior championship. He had around 300 amateur fights. He also faced and beat Usyk in the amateurs as well. Something about Beterbiev is that when he's hurt, he seems to come back stronger, better. He has been hurt, though. I would like to say that. He has been hurt. So he had a fight with Callum Johnson, and he did go down. It is possible sometimes he does let his defense slip. That's what I'm saying. If in one of those moments Anthony Yarde lands one of his ridiculous power punches, there is a chance. There is that puncher's chance in this one. There really is. However, the skill that Artur Beterbiev has, the boxing IQ, you can see it from the amateur. You can tell that this guy has been boxing for pretty much all of his life, which is why I'm going to say that he is a safe win. But this is definitely a fight that you'd want to watch. Like, it's going to be enjoyable for sure. So now let's go on to the second fight, which I'm going to preview today. So this will be on just before Beterbiev and Yarde. And this is actually another world championship. So you got a little bonus one on this card. And this is the World Flyweight WBA Championship. And we've got the undefeated Ukrainian champion, Artur Beterbiev. He's 21-0, 15 wins coming by knockout. He's 35, and this is his 6th defense of that title. And you might not have heard of him that much, which is, I'm going to explain why. He is against his mandatory challenger, which is David Jimenez, who is 12-0, 9 knockouts going on there, and he's 30, so 5 years younger. He's from Costa Rica. So let's talk about Artur first. Now, he's had a 5-year reign as this champ. He got the belt in 2018. However, there's been a lot of talk around him about inactivity. He hasn't been very active. He's had 21 bouts in, I think it's 11 years, which isn't a lot when you compare it to other boxers. But you have to remember that he is Ukrainian. So he didn't have a single fight in 2022, but as a lot of the Ukrainian boxers did, you know, put their gloves down and went to join the war effort out there. And that's exactly what Talkin did. So let's not, you know, that 2022, completely understandable that there weren't any fights. However, it does mean that could he be a little bit rusty? I guess we'll wait and see. So he began boxing when he was 13 years old. Straight away entered international tournaments, European tournaments. He's got a decent amateur career behind him. If you kind of compare him to the British champion of the World Flyweights with Sonny Edwards, he's ranked #1 across the boards and the magazines, whereas Artur Beterbiev is either ranked 3 or 4, and his opponent is ranked around 6. So just to give you an idea of how this fight might play out. Okay, so his last fight was Louis Concepcion. There was a TKO in the 9th round, and that was in November 2021 in Ukraine. So again, over a year ago. It's been, what, a year and 2 months? I can't count. But it's been a while since his last fight. He doesn't want to slow down, though. He's really confident. He is the reigning champ. I mean, he's had this belt for 5 years. He's had 6 defenses, even without, you know, having those bouts in between. He seems to be able to knock away his opponents quite easily. He's fights a lot on the back foot. I would say he's really good on the counter. He kind of like lures you in a little bit. So he's quite dangerous, quite deceptive. And I think that will actually work in his favor against David Jimenez, who I'll talk about now. So he is from Costa Rica. And unlike Talkin, he's been very active. He's a regular fighter. He's had 12 fights in the last 4 years. So just to, you know, compare that, he's been out and about an awful lot more. His last fight was actually a mixed decision to Ricardo Sandoval, who is a world-class fighter. He got an 11th round knockdown to secure him that slight win. And this was a big upset for the American Sandoval. So it was a decent win. It was something that they didn't expect him to do, and he did. So he has a great pedigree as well, really good amateur career. He had, I think it was 350 fights. He'd won like 315 of them. He also had a bronze medal in 2013. And interestingly, when he was winning that bronze, Talkin, the current champion, was defending international titles by then. So you can also see that there's a lot of difference between how much experience these guys have had. Like Talkin has been around for a long time and has a lot more experience. Jimenez, though, he's really sharp, he's aggressive, he's happy to go to war. He's got a lot of power behind his punches, but from what I saw, sometimes he misses. And I think that's going to work against him because Talkin's really great on those counter punches. So I think again, that would be a nice feisty fight. And I think people are up for seeing, okay, what's Artur Talkin going to bring? Is he still up there? Is he still the champion that people think that he was? But or can you imagine how much better he would be if he had been active? So check that one out. That will be the fight just before the headliner. Now let's move on to the next fight I'm going to talk about. We have Karol Itoma. and he is going to be fighting Ezequiel Moderna. Now, Carroll's great. His last fight was in December on the Tyson Fury and Chisora card. I interviewed him and he was really nice. And he did a really great job. He beat Vladimir Belusky. He won via TKO in the 8th round. It was an 8-round fight, so he won that right at the end, but it was an impressive show. Now he is very lucky because he's been on 2 Fury undercards, so he's had quite a lot of exposure. He's on his way up. So at the moment he's 9-0 and he's had 7 KOs. He's only 22 years old. This is a light heavyweight championship as well, so hopefully following on the path to be like Beterbiev and Anthony Yarde. So this is obviously a very quick turnaround for him because he was last out in December. Here he is in January. What's really nice about him is that he has had the same coach since he was 14 years old, as has his brother, who I will talk about soon because he is going to be on this card with his debut. So Carroll, I've chatted about him a little bit before in the show, but great amateur career. Everyone was fighting for him. Frank Warren managed to get him to sign. He won gold in the Youth Olympics in 2018, and he went pro only last year. He is a future star. You know, he's been super active. He's had 9 fights in slightly less than 2 years. So I mean, yeah, he's going quickly on his way up. He's a southpaw as well, so it always makes him that tiny bit more dangerous. Now, this is a cool fact for you. This is his first 10-round fight. So he's looking for his first, well, he is 10-0. And he is fighting against the same guy who Beterbiev fought against in 2016 for his 10-0. So he's literally on those same footsteps. However, that was in 2016. So Moderna, is he the same fighter that he was back then? Probably not, but we'll see. Or is he more experienced? We will see. So this is his first ever title shot. This is for the vacant WBC International light heavyweight title. So this will be the first belt for Carroll if he wins, if he makes it through this. I think he will. I think there's so much belief in him. There's an awful lot of pressure. I asked him about the pressure and he said, no, he doesn't feel it. He wants it, spurs him on to go further. I think he'll be all right. So he'll be against Ezequiel, who said, well, he's won 26 fights. He's lost 6 of them. He's had 16 KOs and he's 36 years old. So we have a massive difference when it comes to experience with these guys. We've literally got really young novice against someone that's been in with amazing opponents, such as Beterbiev. He's from Argentina. He is a former Olympian. He won bronze at the 2006 American Games, and he went pro in 2008. At the beginning of his career, he had 19 consecutive wins, basically until he got in the ring with Beterbiev. And when he got in with him, obviously he lost, and since then he's had on and off wins. So he's not by any means done, but you know, it's not as as clear cut as it was. He's coming off 2 losses into this fight, so again that's going to spur him on to fight harder. His last fight was actually for a WBA Continental Super Middleweight title, so whether or not that weight change is going to suit him better or not, we'll soon see. So I mentioned Carroll because this is a great night for the Atama brothers. Now, Carroll Atama's brother, Moses, he is making his debut tomorrow night on this very same card. Now, everyone is really excited about this guy. I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to make you excited about this guy. There's going to be the Atama brothers like leading the way. I genuinely believe that. So Moses, he is 18 years old, and I would say is the most kind of excitable, best amateur career of a heavyweight for a really long time. So he's literally only just 18. He turned 18 on the 29th of December. He has already had this incredible amateur career. So he won gold for England at the Youth Olympics and European Championships. And he had a really rare undefeated record of 24-0. To also give you a bit of perspective, at the Youth World and Europeans, he won every single one of his fights via KO. And that included 4 first round finishes. So this guy has ridiculous power. Just so much power. Now, they had a chat with him. He had a chat with his brother Carroll and was like, okay, shall I wait to the Olympics and go for gold at the Olympics in Paris, or do I go pro? So they had a chat about it, and they literally wrote out like a list of pros and cons. Okay, what would you get from each? And what they found was that the record holder for the youngest ever heavyweight champion goes to Mike Tyson, right? And they worked out that if Moses Atuma goes pro, then he would have 2 years, 4 months to try and beat Mike Tyson's, what do you call it? Mike Tyson's record. Okay, so they decided that would be way more exciting than trying to go for gold at the Olympics. So here he is. So they worked out that he needs to have at least 8 fights a year to try and get on the way to this. But Frank Warren and everyone at Queensberry is pretty convinced that this is possible. No one's seen a heavyweight amateur like this for ages. Like, it's genuinely exciting. The only split decision he ever had in a fight as an amateur was when he was 11 years old. So yeah, another story that I really like about him. So when he was 14, he was going to the boxing club after school, literally in his school uniform, takes tie off, whatever, and he'd get in the ring with Lawrence Okoli and spar Lawrence Okoli and do really well. He would also be sparring Joe Joyce, Dubois, AJ, who have all come out and said, this guy is someone else. I'm telling you, he's going to be a really exciting prospect. I mean, whether or not he manages to beat Mike Tyson, I mean, who knows? It's not a very long time to be able to do that. But Queensberry is behind him. But obviously, you never know about injuries, matchups, whatever's going to happen. But I'm very excited to watch his career. I think especially at the same time where you've got Carol Otoma, his brother, going for his first ever belts. They're going to be doing this together. They've discussed how each other are going to watch each other for tomorrow night. It's going to be tricky because they've always been side by side supporting each other through the amateurs and now through the pros. So how are they going to balance that? However, they're super excited. They've got loads of their family flying over. They're from Britain, but I think it's Slovakia. Their family, a lot of them live there, and they've come over because it's a big fat night. Now Moses faces a guy called Marcel Bode, who's 2 fights. He won 2 fights, lost 1 fight, 2 KOs to win, and he lost by KO. I bring this up because it's not your normal standard journeyman for a debut. It's not clear that he is even a journeyman. You know, this guy does have power. So yeah, he's 26 years old, and Marcel Bode is from the Czech Republic. He's very new as well, though. Like, he's only gone 5 rounds. He's coming off a loss, so that one loss that he does have is the most recent. Take from that what you will. In that he got a TKO, well, he got TKO'd in the second round. It was a 6-round fight. That was in November 2022. So again, quick turnaround for him. Before that, though, he won his first 2 fights via TKOs in first and second rounds, which is why I say he's got some decent power. We don't know enough about him to be sure that this is someone that Moses can beat. I think everything I've just said about Moses, though, is pretty clear cut. When you look at the odds, it's 1 to 100 for Moses to win. So don't bother putting any money on there. Marcel's 25 to 1. So yeah, exciting. So there's your 4 fights for you tomorrow. I had actually done a 5th one because it was supposed to be Willie Hutchinson as well, the Scottish prospect. For some reason, that's been dropped from the card, really annoyingly. But I think this is exciting enough as it is. So join me next week because, I mean, I don't normally preview the American fights. I stick to the ones here in my hometown in London, but I've decided that because there haven't been any female fights over the last couple of weeks, which upsets me greatly, that I'm going to cover next week because it's brilliant. Amanda Serrano, she is back and she is facing Erica Cruz. That's going to be a really good fight. And then Alicia Baumgartner, we saw her against Michaela Mayer last year. That was such a good fight as well. She's going to be facing LM McCullough. So I'll go through those fights and also the others on the card. So make sure you tune in next week, same time. That is Talkin Fight with me, Holly Donovan. Enjoy tomorrow night, guys. I'll see you soon.